So President Trump now says he might show up in person to watch the Supreme Court argue his authority to set sweeping tariffs. A decision from the justices could overturn lower court rulings, which found the president has no legal authority to impose country-specific tariffs from earlier this year. Trump calls it one of the most important cases ever brought. So joining me now to talk about it, former U.S. attorney and host of the Talking Feds podcast, our friend Harry Litman. Harry, what is your reaction to Trump saying that he might sit in that courtroom and listen to arguments on his behalf?
Well, that it's posturing, but I don't think he has a real sense of what it means for the Supreme Court, even though this court is very solicitous of him. It will not impress them at all. It really is just going to be, if he does it, quite a nuisance and distraction for the argument itself. I've been there when big shots have attended, though not the president. And of course, if he really wanted to, he could listen to it. And it's not as if he has any remote understanding of the issues. So I think this is a bit of grandstanding, that if the audience is meant to be the Supreme Court, even this Trump Supreme Court, it won't help him at all.
Now, look, I don't want to be dismissive of this because, I mean, picture it. You've got a president of the United States in that court. This president, we've seen the way he can sit and glower at people. How intimidating could that be, and potentially influential, given those 6 or so that will typically vote with him?
Look, I see the point, and there's a lot of ways in which they lean that way anyway. But, you know, they've been at the State of the Union, and I think, and they've had people, big shots in the, you know, that they are with all the time in D.C. I understand that Trump, as Trump might be thinking, he'll give them the big glower and then they'll know, oh, they better jump into shape. But again, even the ones who, for whatever reason, tend to save him again and again up there, I think that extra oomph that he's hoping for of the, you know, the big hair and glower, honestly, my best guess, and I corked there, 2 years I've argued there. I don't think it cuts any slack for him, though you know, it's so much in his playbook to think it does.
Well, I mean, you know, he can't remove him from the court, so there you have that. Yeah. Although he could try.
They could say no, thank you. They could, because it's going to be such a bother. Even that wouldn't be out of the question, I think.
Okay, so let's talk about last week when the Supreme Court heard the arguments in a case challenging Louisiana's congressional map and its compliance with the Voting Rights Act. So a ruling could upend this landmark law. What is at stake here?
Yeah, it is really a big deal, Alex. You know, we grew up thinking of the Voting Rights Act in general as the luminous act, statute in all of the civil rights era. And there were 2 really big provisions of it, Section 5 and Section 2. The court gutted Section 5 a few years back, leaving only Section 2, which still said if you draw these maps and they have the effect, not even the intent, but the effect of disenfranchising minority voters, you've got to go back to the drawing board. If they get rid of this, and all indications were that that's the direction the court is going in, this entire landmark legislation, part of such a change that we've been proud of and for the achievements of the civil rights era, is basically in the dustbin of history. It's a huge prospect.
And this is beyond just Louisiana, right? I mean, you're saying this would extend potentially across the nation.
No, this is saying that this whole statute, which applies anywhere to any state that draws maps that dilute the votes of minority voters. So in Louisiana, it is 1/3 African American. They drew a map that only had 1 out of 6, and they were told, go back and do another one. There are some 15 seats in Congress that are because of that exact provision. And yes, it would just be a dead letter. They would put it on life support, I think, the way they would do it, by saying not exactly overruling it, but it would be overruled in all but the word of it. And again, big change from the regime we've had since the mid 60s, half of which got lopped off, and the other half potentially here. Really a huge possible case.
So let's move to disgraced former Congressman George Santos, because he's speaking out for the first time since Trump commuted his 7-year prison sentence after less than 3 months. Santos today thanking the president while hinting at his future. Take a listen.
I have been dealt a second chance. I have a lot to prove to a lot of people, and I have to make sure President Trump understands that I am not going to disappoint him.
Any plans that you might try and return to Congress?
Not run for Congress, that's for sure. That's definitely not something I want to do at the immediate moment. I think.
But you're not ruling it out?
I'm not ruling it out, no.
Well, joining me now, Democratic Congressman from Washington, Adam Smith. He, of course, the ranking member on the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman, welcome back to the broadcast. Good to have you here. So if negotiations are going nowhere with Republican lawmakers, could Democrats try to make a deal directly with President Trump? I mean, how else can this shutdown end?
No, I think we should. I think, understanding the issue here, though, is important. The Republicans are refusing to negotiate, and Mike Johnson has completely shut down the United States House of Representatives. And to disagree with the senator there, I think it does pass the laugh test more than just a little bit to say the Republicans are trying to jam their budget down our throats. Healthcare is a critical issue right now. We don't have much leverage as Democrats. We really don't. They control the House, they control the Senate, they control the White House. Donald Trump is running roughshod over the laws of this country and the Constitution. But the one little piece of leverage we do have is they need our votes to continue to fund their budget. They need at least 7 Democrats in the Senate. So to say that we should just give that up and allow Donald Trump to keep running the government the way he is running it, ignore the health care crisis, and continue to put forward the radical budget that the Republicans passed in their budget reconciliation bill, and the Democrats should sign up for that, that just doesn't make any sense. And the Republican approach of, no, we're not going to negotiate, you have to accept what we say, is really unprecedented. We have never gone out of session in the House during shutdowns before. So I think if the Republicans were willing to negotiate, whether it's Johnson or Thune or President Trump, whoever, if they were simply willing to negotiate for our votes instead of saying, no, you just have to give them to us. We don't have to give them to them, certainly not on this budget.
So the chair of the House Armed Services Committee addressed a pretty concerning consequence of the shutdown, a shutdown that he and other top Republicans are blaming on Chuck Schumer and Senate Democrats. Listen to this, sir.
Another consequence that we're dealing with, we were just informed last night, but the National Nuclear Security Administration, the group that handles and manages our nuclear stockpile, that the carryover funding they've been using is about to run out. They will have to lay off 80% of their employees. These are not employees that you want to go home.
No. Other defense workers and national security functions have also been impacted. Are lawmakers and the Trump administration taking these kinds of risks seriously?
I don't think they are. They don't seem to be. I mean, Donald Trump has been celebrating the shutdown from even before it happened. Look, I don't disagree, and I agree with Mike Rogers 100% that it's very dangerous to have NNSA employees off the job. I think the shutdown is devastating for this country. It absolutely is. But then why are Republicans seemingly so okay with it? They won't even talk to Democrats. As I said the other day, Trump will negotiate with Hamas, Putin, and North Korea, but he won't negotiate with Democrats over health care and the budget. And I don't think people fully understand what the so-called clean CR is. It's a continuing resolution, but it's a continuation of Trump's budget, which is terrible for 2 reasons. One, because their budget is devastating to health care in favor of more spending for ICE and DHS and massive tax cuts. But 2, don't forget that Donald Trump isn't obeying the law. They want us to vote to continue a budget when Trump says he can go ahead and spend the money however he wants anyway. He's shutting down programs, and long before the shutdown, he was doing this. He was blocking programs, freezing spending, targeting Democratic areas of the country. If we don't get something to say, no, we're going to change the law so that Trump can't do that anymore, we'd just be voting to continue to give Trump the power that he has abused to date. So let's at least have a conversation about it. Let's get Congress back in session. Mike Johnson has effectively shut down the United States House of Representatives in favor of a, just blank check executive power for Donald Trump. we have to speak out against that. I mean, I agree that healthcare is the most important thing. I think democracy is pretty darn important too.
Yeah.
And that is also what is at stake in this shutdown fight.
I am really glad that you outlined the CR rather, and had put that explanation for our viewers. I do want to ask you about what happened earlier today. 9 days after the Trump brokered ceasefire, Israel has launched airstrikes on southern Gaza after accusing Hamas of firing toward Israeli troops. Hamas is claiming that Israel is, quote, fabricating a weak pretext to justify its crimes. All of this, does it dim your hopes for lasting peace?
Donald Trump's actions right now show a leader who believes power exists just to serve him. Not the people, not the Constitution, not the country, just him. His decision to personally attend the Supreme Court hearing over his tariff authority looks less like respect for the rule of law and more like an attempt to intimidate it and make sure things are just going how he wants. He wants to physically insert himself into a courtroom where the nation's highest judges will debate the limits of his authority, and they've shown plenty of times that they'll let him do what he wants. That move shows a leader turning a legal process into a stage for personal power. It's theater, designed to blur the line between the executive branch and the judiciary. He already wants all of the power to be consolidated under him, and he has taken to intimidating or just being there in person just to make sure. This reeks of strongman politics, where even physical presence alone is expected to bend justice to personal will. If he's sitting there in the room staring at you, you might be more willing to do what he wants, especially knowing what kind of power he has. The Supreme Court already heavily leans conservative. They've removed women's rights, they've removed trans rights, they've removed immigrants' rights. They're firmly under his thumb. And Trump's confidence in their loyalty says a lot. Yet, this open display of dominance showing up, glaring and expecting even more influence, reveals just the many ways that power can be abused, and each little thing he does that kind of tides it over, just a little bit. I gotta show up and intimidate them in person. The case over tariffs no longer even centers on policy. It was never about politics or real things. It was just about personal vendettas and control over other countries. It exposes a president who believes that he embodies the law itself. Remember, we've never had presidents just create new tariffs for no reason. That's not a real thing. He just did that illegally, and it's the new normal now. That is the real danger. Like when a president behaves as though the court exists to affirm his authority instead of holding him accountable for the many, many laws he's broken. Democracy itself begins to tilt off balance. And in terms of tilting, that seesaw is all the way on one side. And at the same time, Trump's pattern of rewarding loyalty and punishing accountability has become painfully clear. His commutation of George Santos' sentence, remember that guy? After basically just a few months in prison out of his really long sentence, sends the loudest possible message that corruption pays as long as the loyalty remains intact. Santos lied constantly, cheated, everything about him was fake. He even stole money from a dying dog's fundraiser. This guy. Yet Trump still called his sentence excessive. Even though he wasn't involved in the court case, he doesn't know anything about it. He doesn't know who this guy is, probably. He just wanted him free because he supported Trump. He's a Republican. Loyalty matters over everything else. Justice no longer stands at the center of power, and this country even. Just personal allegiance to Trump stands at the middle. That's what matters to him and this administration. The signal is unmistakable. Those who serve Trump's interests can break the law and walk free, just be pardoned, while those who challenge him and don't even break the law face destruction and constant attacks. Meanwhile, Trump's misuse of government power stretches across every branch. He's spread his tentacles into every little bit. He treats Congress like an obstacle instead of a co-equal body. He's driving the shutdowns and redirecting funds however he chooses. Even Republican lawmakers remain frozen or just unwilling or unable to push back. He runs the government kind of absolutely as if oversight no longer exists and loyalty is the only rule. That reflects rule by decree, not governance. And remember, we just had a protest for no kings, so it's looking a little bit too much. And then there's the recent thing about Venezuela. Trump's reckless decision to authorize extrajudicial killings under the banner of anti-drug operations, just bombing random boats. This reveals how absolute power can warp judgment, if he even had any kind of judgment to begin with. There's no congressional authorization, no evidence, no accountability, only just explosions justified by his word. There's a boat. I want to bomb it. Here's a random excuse. This is a dangerous abuse of military force and an open violation of international law that could see some dangerous consequences, let alone just being murder of random people on a boat. You can't do that either way. Across every front, from the Supreme Court to Venezuela, literally every single instance, Trump's playbook remains identical. Expand his reach, erase the limits as much as he can, and dare anyone to resist him and feel his fury. Each move undermines the institutions that once stood as guardrails for democracy. The longer this continues, the closer America drifts towards a system where law, justice, and truth exist only when convenient to him, and only matter in the context of political power. The founders warned of this exact scenario. A man, a wannabe king, convinced that the presidency gives him the right to do whatever he desires, wherever he chooses, and against whomever he decides. We don't want kings in this country, and Trump thinks he's a king. You saw that AI video he recently posted. He thinks he's a king, and we have to fight back against this kind of tyranny.